Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. And we're broadcasting throughout the United Kingdom and around the world on all our digital platforms, bringing you quality pro-UK opinion and analysis every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching on TikTok. Thank you for watching on Facebook and on YouTube and also on Twitter. And folks, let's share this broadcast and let's get it out. We have a fantastic guest on at the bottom of the hour. He is none other than the Emperor. He will be known to many as the Emperor. He's known to others as simply David Clews of Unity News Network, of UNN. And he's coming on at 7:30 for 20 minutes. And we can't wait to talk to him about what's been happening in his life, because it's been quite exciting for him. And not necessarily in a good way. And there's only so much that you can talk about when he comes on at 7:30, but many of you know, of course, there was a march, an anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian, pro-freedom march in Glasgow, organically organised, and well, David may choose to tell you as much as he can about that, but that's coming on. David's coming on at 7:30 tonight. And if you're watching on TikTok, the best place to see my interview with David Clews will be to switch to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/UK A Force for Good. And you'll find our live broadcast up there right now. That's David Clews at 7:30. And Alan comes in and says, any opinion on the SNP trying to get involved in the Ukraine crisis? Well, what can you say possibly about them trying to get involved in the Ukraine crisis, right? Firstly, as you say, they forget that foreign policy is not in their remit. But they also imagine that Ukraine is like some small country away out, on the far reaches of the EU. And Alan Smith, who's one of their MPs, he said that, Ukraine is a small country like Scotland. And so he imagines. But Ukraine is actually 2.5 times the size of the whole of the United Kingdom. And it has actually got 44 million people in it, as opposed to Scotland's 5 million. So it's anything other than a small country like Scotland. But I thought that just went basically to show the level of what we're dealing with there when we're dealing with the SNP. And the Daily Record today, they had on the internet, they had what happens if the Russians actually nuke Glasgow. They had worked out if the Russians nuke Glasgow, blast radius and they had a map of the blast radius, right? And unfortunately, it's going to hit this office, and this office will be taken out. And that was, for me, the worst thing, really, to think that this office could get eradicated if the Russians nuke Glasgow. But if you're living in Cumbernauld, depends if you're in the western side of Cumbernauld, you probably will get eviscerated or obliterated. But if you're on the other side of Cumbernauld, you'll probably be okay. But the good news is Larkhall completely escapes the blast radius. So basically we all have to go out to Larkhall if we want to escape the nuclear Armageddon that might be unleashed. But that's really more of a funny story, and nobody's taking that seriously, perhaps other than the SNP, who are doing nothing to prevent that scenario, I might add. I should have put this out on Twitter, but, if they really want to stop the Russians nuking Scotland, then maybe they should be on the Russian side instead of, standing up and making big, carrying on and fighting, and Alan Smith out there standing up against the Russians. Well, what's that going to do? That's just going to increase the chances that we're going to get nuked. Thanks a lot, mate. Thanks a lot. They don't think it through. You know what I mean? You've got to think these things through. And at the end of the day, as Janie says, there's nothing to do with them, is it? It's a nonsense. It's a nonsense. And that's the bottom line. But they like to posture, don't they? They like to posture. And Stephen there gives us some information. Russia has, 6,255 nukes. I doubt Putin would only fire one. That's enough to take out not just Glasgow, but the entire galaxy. several times over, including themselves. So I hope they give some consideration to that. Guest coming up at 7:30, none other than the Emperor David Clews, which is how all his fans refer to him. That's funny. Great guy. We had him on the Union telethon, not this year but last year in 2020. He was our first guest on our Union telethon and he was amazing. Nelson says, I'm less than 5 minutes from the M15 in the American embassy. What chance have I got? You don't have any chance, Nelson, I'm afraid. I'm afraid you have to, as I say, move to Larkhall and you'll escape the blast radius. Paul Hadlow says, Russia, we should take Kenny Everett's famous advice to 1983 Tory party conference. Yes, well, those of us who are old enough to know that will remember exactly what you meant when he stood up there and said, let's bomb Russia. And that was Kenny Everett for you. But Margaret Thatcher thought that it was a very funny joke indeed. Whereas nowadays, if somebody said that, right, Boris Johnson would go, this is just, it's not acceptable comedy, that, and we're going to bring in a law to stop people being ironically funny. Maybe the masks will help with the nuclear fallout. That's true. Could maybe that's how they'll sell it. It'll be like, wear your mask to prevent the radiation getting in. PBC, whom I've met, says they have launched an update of the 1980s playbook, Bad Russians and a Killer Virus. Yes, in that sense, it does feel like that. You know, one of my mentors was a colonel, who had been in a regiment in the British Army, and I knew him for many years, and he taught me a lot about politics and a lot of the sort of things that I know now. And he sadly passed away a few years ago, but he lived down in England. And I remember something that he said to me. He goes, Alistair, I may have told you this before. He said, I spent my whole career, my whole life, looking over the Berlin Wall until one day I realised I had been looking the wrong way. And that really always struck me, you know, because as he got older, he realised that the enemy is actually within, it's not without. A very wise chap, that fellow. And not just a mentor to me, but a mentor to other famous people that are around today. So Adam's bringing in some thinking here about where precisely things should be targeted. He says Moscow or St. Petersburg, because that's where Putin is based. I'm going to get a lot of collateral damage just to take out one man, though, isn't it? When you think about it. Have I got a cold? No, I don't have a cold. I've got sniffles because of my jacket that's been hanging up that I haven't worn for a while. Well, there's a good point that Stephen makes. You know, when Trump was president, it was all about North Korea starting World War III. That was the big fear, wasn't it? Trump got on a plane and had a face-to-face with the leader. Biden just wants to stir it up and cancel meetings, indeed. So yeah, good stuff coming in tonight. Now we've got a guest coming up at 7:30 who is none other than the Emperor David Clews of Unity News Network. Banned from Twitter, Unity News Network were knocked off after building up a very big following. They were knocked off after David probably will remind us, but I think it was back in 2020 when they started to get a little bit sceptical about the COVID narrative, and they were only sceptical about it. They weren't, and from a quite normal scientific point of view, they were sceptical of the masks, of the lockdowns, and all that sort of stuff. And so, what did Twitter do? Sorry, what did YouTube do? Just banned them. You know. So David and his organisation, they're still going, and they're on DLive, which is not a platform that we're on, but they make good use of it on DLive, and we'll be putting up the addresses for David when he comes on, but they're still on Twitter as well. Well, here's something. I just want to put up a picture of the very first picture that we took for A Force for Good, and that's myself on the 21st of March 2012 when we launched A Force for Good. When we launched A Force for Good as largely a website at that time. That picture was the first picture that went up on our very first website on the 21st of March 2012. Now, for those of you mathematically minded, you'll realise that's 10 years ago this March. So on the 21st of March this year, our organisation is going to be 10 years old. And to celebrate, we are having a birthday bash in the centre of town, in a central venue, on Saturday the 19th. Okay, and if you're an activist, if you've ever been out with us on the street, or if you've ever donated to us, or if you donate to us monthly, you are invited. Please, what you must do, if you want to come along, please do contact us by sending us an email so that we can note you down and we can tell you the precise venue and times and location, and we can tell you all about it and give you all the details. So that's on Saturday the 19th of March. And to celebrate as well, not only on that day, we are going to launch our special collector's edition of our magazine Union Heart, which is going to be 16 pages, and it's going to have 10 pages dedicated, 1 page each, to each of those 10 years, telling what we did in 2012, 13, 14, 15, right through to the present time. And there's so much that we've done, from starting just as a two-man operation with a website to where we are now in 10 years. It's so much to cover in this magazine. It was going to start off as 8 pages. I had to put it up to 12. It's now going to be 16 pages. A special collector's edition of Union Heart, which will be coming out on our 10th birthday. So folks, all activists and all donors, doesn't matter what you've given, if you've given a $5 or more, you're invited, okay? And all activists, whether you've been out a lot or just once, you're all invited. So please do come along. And if you just want to come along to meet us anyway, you're also invited. All you have to do is send us an email, contact@aforceforgood.uk, and we'll send you the details of our birthday bash, our 10th birthday celebration. Meet some great people at it. Meet some great people. Our guest, the Emperor, is in the waiting room, and he's a busy man tonight because he's got a programme at 8 o'clock. So as soon as he's finished with us, and he'll tell us all about it, no doubt, he is going to be doing his own programme on D-Live, and he's interviewing a fairly famous person in COVID skepticism tonight as well, a fellow called Roger Hodkinson. At least I believe he is. He'll tell us more about that. And I'm just about to bring him in, actually, because he's ready there. And so we'll just, folks, please do say hello to David Clews.
Hello.
Hello, David.
Alistair, how are you?
I'm very well there. Is that your new pad in Los Angeles behind you?
I'm just relaxing in the UNN green room. This is the UNN green room. So I'm just relaxing in here just now before the show starts.
Yes. I think some people will believe you as well. But,
well, I know.
I didn't know you could play a grand piano. Yeah.
I can do a lot of things. Well, hopefully we'll get you some more numbers. If anyone's coming on, they'll give you a watch. Alistair, how are you anyway? You all right?
Yeah, things are good. Things are very good here. They're always good in the AFFG Nerve Centre. And what we want to talk about is how things are with you, because and I know there will only be so much that you'll be able to talk about, because
I'm so happy to talk about it. It's honestly it's such a nothing burger, Alistair. So happy to talk about it.
Really. Well, it's, feel free to speak about as much as you want and as much as you think legally that you're able to speak about. But just for the sake of the viewers, many of our viewers will already know you as somebody who has been involved for the last 2 years with your organisation UNN, or Unity News Network. And in that, especially during the last 18 months or so, you and also Carl Pearson, who we spoke to last week, you've been heavily involved in simply trying to bring out hidden elements of the medical situation that we're all under, the biosecurity state, and emphasising the negative elements of it, and also parts of the establishment narrative that we don't hear elsewhere, but all from a very sensible, straightforward, common sense kind of point of view. Here in Glasgow, we've been having, every month or so, there's been an anti-lockdown march. I don't quite know how to categorise it, if it's how they call it, if it's pro-freedom march, anti-lockdown march, whatever. You probably know better, but there was one on Saturday. That's Saturday the 19th here in Glasgow, and would you like to take it from there and just tell us your thoughts on it?
So the anti-lockdown movement is quite an organic thing up in Scotland. I think it's important to stress that. There's not one specific organised or anything. I mean, I've organised demonstrations around Scotland and the UK, but the ones on Glasgow just tends to be everybody gets together and has a wee walk in the city centre, and everybody kind of knows the script. So It started about 2 weeks ago. I think there was a rally down in Ayr, and you'll have probably seen the footage of that. And that marked a real shift in the rhetoric of the police. And the police actually arrested people on that day. They went in pretty heavy, and they lifted people on the grounds of taking part in an illegal procession. So on Saturday, we were gathering in Glasgow Green, as always happened. And at the start, the police were there. Well, a lot more police than usual. They had cameras and they had a megaphone, and they were saying, you are taking part in an illegal procession. If you take part in an illegal procession, you will be arrested. So that's fine. Then we all got out and we all started walking. Now, up until this point, the police had been facilitating these, because usually if you're protesting or demonstrating about something, you don't want to necessarily involve the authorities. So what the police normally do is they facilitate it. If people do start breaking the law in terms of, smashing windows or blocking streets, then, that's a different story altogether. But on this occasion, the police came in with a very different tone, and I then saw people at the front being spoken to by a sergeant. So I went up and joined them, and the sergeant then said to me look, you're taking part in a illegal procession. If you continue to take part in this illegal procession, you will be arrested. So we then get to George Square, and that sergeant is walking around, he's telling people, and he says to me, you're going to get arrested. And I was like, well, if you're going to arrest me, please do it now. And he said, well, I'm not going to make a martyr of you. So they waited a wee while, and then lo and behold, there was people on the other side started getting arrested, and then he came to me and said, right, I'm arresting you, and blah, 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 and I had the cuffs put on, and I was put in the back of the van, and what they said was, look, we're going to arrest you, but we're going to let you go, and they did say that beforehand. With conditions. So they took us in, and I was hoping we would go in, we'd maybe be 2 or 3 hours, and then we would get out. It took 8 hours for the paperwork to get done, and as part of that paperwork there was a condition that I am not allowed to attend, organise or facilitate any demonstrations in Scotland. So effectively banned from campaigning in Scotland, and this is a technique that Police Scotland have now started to use, because there was one guy who had those conditions, went to Glasgow on Saturday, he was then arrested on the Sunday, kept overnight in custody, and then it got in front of a judge, and the judge is like, well, why are you here? This is nothing. And then he got released.
Well, that's extraordinary. Now, I know I've been on 2 of these marches, and all that happens is people just rock up at the Nelson Monument on Glasgow Green, and the one I was on, there would be at least 800, maybe 1,200 people there, and then everybody just heads off, and it's a very peaceful walk, really. You would hardly even call it a march, and people are just in a kind of fairly thin line, and they just snake through the streets of Glasgow. And the one I was at, I think there was 2 or 3 police cyclists on bicycles at the front of the march, and if I can recall rightly, I'm presuming that they were just saying to the folks at the front, where do you want to go? And they would say, oh, we'll go up here, and then we'll turn down here, and then we'll go up there. And the police were just there just to be kept, just so when they were walking across a main road, for example, they could hold the traffic back, and just things like that. And it was all very peaceful, and they got on very well, and there's absolutely no conflict whatsoever, or not even a hint of it. It was just very much a family outing of people with children and everything, and totally non-party political. No, well, there's a few people who you could tell were against Nicola Sturgeon, but certainly it wasn't pro one particular party or another. It was just very normal people in Glasgow just walking on a very peaceful march. And it looks like, and I don't know what you've been thinking on this, but they've been getting bigger, slightly bigger.
Yes.
And Sturgeon could be thinking, we don't want these to get any bigger, and we don't want these to get specifically anti-Sturgeon and start putting trouble on us. So she's looking across the waters at her sister Arden, know, and Trudeau, and probably trying to learn a few things from
Correct.
them and think, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? I
Yes.
mean, what, you know, do you think there's some kind of political
I do.
motivation here?
100% I do, Alistair, because as I said, up until this point, the police were fine with it. Because why would they really be that bothered? You know, why would they be filling up cells? Why would they be doing all the paperwork for what is a peaceful demonstration and what is people just expressing their democratic right? Now, the thing about the specific law, procession. Now, a procession is like an orange walk or a Republican walk. This is why this law was brought in. So you can't just all of a sudden decide you're going to do that. But this isn't a procession. This is a demonstration. You know, the two are very, very different. You know, you're you know, there is a difference because it's not organized, it's organic. But you know, they're just kind of using a technicality. So I think the numbers have grown. The police have decided that they're not having anything to do with it. And the reason now, what you could argue is, but you are causing inconvenience, blah blah blah, which is fair enough. But would the police do what they have been doing if this was a BLM rally? Would they be doing this if this was a pro-refugee rally? Or let's just say an organic and spontaneous pro-Nicola Sturgeon demonstration? Do you think the police would arrest people for taking part in an illegal procession supporting Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. No, it's a rhetorical question. They certainly wouldn't. And even the idea of causing disturbance on the particular places where the march walks, I mean, they're quiet streets or they're pedestrianised streets like down Argyle Street, up Buchanan Street and so on. There's not actually any disturbance. In fact, you're actually bringing greater footfall to the centre of Glasgow,
Correct.
Which certainly needs it. Oh my goodness me! These days, post-apocalyptic COVID shutdown, it definitely needs as many people in there as possible. So actually, I mean, there's no, they can't say that it's held up the traffic on the M8 or something like that. It's nothing like that. It's even just beginning in Glasgow Green and walking down round that side of the East End of Glasgow and so on. The streets are largely empty, so there's no, they can't use that argument at all.
Exactly, and you know, in many ways, the police doing this is actually, you know, is how do you radicalize members of the public by doing things like this? You know, I also got the sense that from speaking as well with some of the, you know, the rank and file constables and the others, they knew that it was a farce. You know, they'd never heard of this before. But they will follow the orders of their sergeant. You know, and this again, this is the problem with the police is you know, they have a hive mindset and they will do what they're told, even if it's wrong and they know it's wrong. They're not going to lay themselves down in the street and say, I'm not doing this. You know, they'll go along with it. But so it only takes one sergeant or one high up officer to say, look, let's do something about these demonstrations.
Yeah, I know, they go along with it to an extent that, like, bring back the old 1970s coppers who never did anything and did it wrongly and would let you off all the time and wouldn't actually bother. I mean, half the time, of course, I'm only joking. There's problems there, but going the other extreme is ridiculous because during the summer of 2020, right, myself and a colleague are sitting on a park bench talking on a lovely summer's day, and it was one of the parks here in central Glasgow, and these two coppers were coming down every park bench, asking people not to sit on the park bench and to move along and to move away. And I thought, you know, if I was a senior officer in the two of them there, I would say to the junior, look, I know we've been told to do this, but let's just have a walk in the park. I mean, I'm not going to be telling him to get off a park bench, and I'd advise that you don't either. And I'm sure in the 1970s, coppers would just behave like that. But now you must go, they're like in the morning, they get the briefing. But nobody can sit on a park bench. And they're like, right, I've got to make sure nobody sits on a park bench.
Don't forget this, Pete. I know, and that really just, this is the whole problem of what the last 2 years has done, is it's given power to all the wrong people. And they just love it. Like Sturgeon loves it. Jacinda Ardern loves it. The very people who say that they are the most tolerant people are the most intolerant, and I don't use this term lightly, but fascistic in the way in which they go about their business. You know, they love it. They love the power, and the way they abuse it and have no humility. See, that's the thing about none of these. They've got no humility. It's not about serving others. It's no humility. You know what? One thing I will say is all the police in the custody suite were very polite. They were very courteous and very, very professional. So no issues there whatsoever. But it's just a total waste of time. But this is what they're doing. Look at what they're doing in Canada. The criminalised. I mean, they're seizing bank accounts of people who made donations. A single mother who works in a cafe made a $50 donation, and she's had her bank account shut down.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely horrific. And from the worst thing that I see is that our politicians in this country are not speaking against that.
No,
I mean,
no,
imagine if, and of course it wouldn't happen, but imagine if Trump did that. And his opponents, he said, you can't crowdfund for my opponents.
Well, and you imagine Trump had shut down the bank accounts of BLM, or like the very things that they accuse Trump of, and all these other people, regardless of what you think of Trump, they do themselves. Like
exactly.
they shut you down, they arbitrarily arrest you. You know, it's the hypocrisy of these people is just, it's off the chart. I mean, Trudeau was on talking about Canada stands opposed to authoritarianism. I mean, you can't mark these people's neck with a blowtorch.
That's so true, and they get away with so much by just being so incredibly brazen about it, in a way that a normal person would never have the nerve to even try to do, and would be ashamed to stand up and say these things. I mean, I saw him, and also there's some woman who's sprung to everybody's attention now, who's the deputy prime minister or something like that.
Chrystia Freeland. Oh, she's just off the charts.
Oh, totally. And like the way to get your bank account unfrozen is not to take part in these processions or these demonstrations. I mean, and this is Canada as well. And I've been having this conversation with other people, but the thing is, Trudeau he's clearly not working from a kind of the point of view that you and I and others are working from. He's just not. There's nothing organically Canadian there. It's basically globalist ideology imposing itself top down on the people.
Yeah.
And whereas people like ourselves are very much. I mean, we think of ourselves as kind of live and let live people, really.
Yeah.
But they're like, if you don't agree with us, you're wrong, and we're going to stop you even being heard.
And I don't think you should underestimate just the level of scrutiny. Like Justin, I mean, Justin Trudeau have blackmail on him, you know, or something like that.
Oh, he's got
like
blackface on him.
Well, that's very true, very true. Or like the whole, you know, or they've been pictured in compromising situations, or they've been told, look, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. So they're totally corrupt. They're totally bought. And unfortunately, though, the masses, because of the media that runs cover for them, they think, well, maybe it needs again, this is the issue. People don't know about the World Economic Forum. People don't know about the families that exert huge influence. You know, they don't know about it. So they just think it must be for our good. And it's frightening because we know there's a hidden agenda to this.
Yeah. Yeah, and the hidden agenda is often not so hidden, because the World Economic Forum put out a tweet yesterday saying that cash that is far more suitable now for I've got that somewhere. I'll bring it up actually during the program, but like cash is on the way out, and we really just need to be concentrating now on digital currency. And this is why one of their minions, or one of the people that they've taught, Justin Trudeau, literally is blocking people's bank accounts if they're digital. In other words, preventing them from in any way.
Correct. And the new thing they want to put in is they want to put in a kill switch in every automobile and truck, and they want the central bank digital currency. So basically, if you've been a naughty boy, Alistair, you don't get access to your central bank digital currency this month. And to people that say, oh, well, that's just far-fetched and ridiculous, that's what actually happens in China. That is the system that they have in China. They have a social credit score system. If you don't toe the line, if you don't go along with the agenda, you are deprived of certain elements of life. And again, being a free society, which we once were, that you would have tolerated your opponents. You would have not, cut them off from eating. But that's what they're doing. They're cutting off their access to banking, and they would cut off your access to electricity. They would cut off your access to everything, because we are dealing with psychos.
I know, and they would. And if you had told me this a couple of years ago, I would have been like, well, I don't know if people are naturally good.
I know.
But the last 2 years has been an incredible wake-up call in what politicians worldwide, people who look normal, what they're actually thinking deep down and what they'll actually do if they get the power. I mean, and you're absolutely right. They will, and they'll use the media to brand one a terrorist, for example, and that's what they're doing. They're widening that discussion of what a terrorist is.
Look at the way they weaponized the January the 6th. That there's a lot of different schools of thought about that. It was a lot of people egging them on, but no matter what way you look at it, it was probably a protest that got out of hand. But
I watched it live, and that's all it was.
The way in which, at the end of the day, there was really one person was shot, and that was an unarmed woman who was really just doing nothing wrong, and nobody ever talks about her.
No, and Ashley Babbitt. Yeah, nobody even has heard her name. If that was the other way around, she would be like, there'd be statues going up here in Glasgow to her.
Exactly, and nobody cares. That's the thing is, look, I admit my politics, you admit your politics, but it is the hypocrisy of our opponents, and maybe in many ways our problem is we are decent people, we do have values, we can't put ourselves in these people's shoes, that they are prepared to lie, they're prepared to be duplicitous, they're prepared to do whatever they need to do to get what they want, which is a very, the end justifies the mean. It is a very Maoist understanding of the world that it just isn't our politics.
Yes, exactly. Well, here's the thing. That's a tweet there. World Economic Forum. This came out yesterday. Dethroning cash.
Yeah.
How digital payments are enabling a shift away from the cash economy. And that was meant to be like a good thing that we were meant to all agree with. But what was interesting is that, every single comment under that was negative to them.
Remember, Alistair, the virus can live on cash as well, was the big one by Nancy Pelosi, and
oh yeah.
That was the so it is all designed because it is all about control. And again, you talk about 2 years ago, the UK used to be a high trust society, a society in which we trusted our establishment, we trusted and that was a good thing. But unfortunately, what the last 2 years has shown is that that's gone now.
Yes.
And especially here in Scotland under Sturgeon, the institutions are totally corrupted now, totally politicised. The education system, the judiciary, the legal system, the NHS, everything is now corrupted by this stench. And what made us a great nation was that the civil service, the public sector, was independent of politics, and that's gone now.
Yes, that's a big danger. David, you've got a show at 8:00 tonight. Would you just want to tell the viewers how they can get onto that?
Join us on dlive.tv/Unity News, and everybody please subscribe to Alistair. Alistair is one of the good guys. He does a brilliant job with A Force for Good, and he's been doing a great job for years and a great community. And thanks very much for having me on, Alistair, and I hope to meet you again soon.
Thank you, and you've got a guest on tonight, don't you?
Well, I don't. Dr. Hodkinson's actually hopefully this Friday.
All right.
And I know you mentioned that he's brilliant, so hopefully he'll be on this Friday. I've got Dr. Neil McRae. Have you ever had Neil McRae on the show, Alistair?
No.
Do you know Neil McRae?
No.
Neil's a good friend of mine. He's actually from Gourock originally, and he lives down south now. So
all right.
He's a good guy. You should get in touch with him and get Neil on the show. Neil's one of the good guys.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Well, David, best of luck.
Thanks, Alistair.
How often do you broadcast on D Live?
We're on 6 nights a week, and we're going to be doing an afternoon show as well soon. So,
crikey, you don't stop, do you?
We're other people are helping as well. We've got a great team, so we're firing all cylinders. Alistair, absolute pleasure.
Good. Okay, David, till we speak again. Cheers.
Good man, Alistair. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Wow, David's on fire tonight, and he's on fire every night. He pulls off a show every six nights a week on D Live. Isn't that incredible? Very much a great unionist as well. So as he said there, please do please do support him. He's got a great bunch of friends around him, a great bunch of people who work for him as well. On this day, we had 4 famous people passed away on the 23rd of February. One of them was a musician, one was a comedian, one was a painter, and one was an author. And in 1934, Edward Elgar passed away. Let's stick a pic of him up there. He composed the music known as Land of Hope and Glory, Mother of the Free. What an amazing gift he gave our nation. He did not actually compose the words. It was Arthur Benson who composed the words, but he composed the stirring music. And then, on this day in 1965, the death of a comedian, the death of Stan Laurel, at the age of 74. And he was born in Ulverston in Lancashire. As it was back then, he was born way back in 1890 and he died this day in 65. And then, on this day in 1976, another fellow passed, a tired old man with hair like snow told northern folk it's time to go. And that was Lowry, the painter, who, there's a picture of him there, who was really brought to the attention of many people and indeed immortalised in the Brian and Michael song, Matchstock Men and Matchstock Cats and Dogs. And we were going to play the video of that song by Brian and Michael, which reached number 1 in March and April 1978, but when we thought, no, we'll get hit with a copyright, so we'll just say that he painted Salford smoky tops on cardboard boxes from the shops and parts of Ancoats where I used to play. I'm sure he once walked down our street 'cause he painted kids who were now on the feet. The clothes we wore had all seen better days. That was Lowry, who passed away today. And then finally in 1995, Alf White passed away, and he's better known as James Herriot. And from the age of 3 weeks old, he was brought up in Glasgow, and he went to Yoker High School, and then he went to Hillhead High School, and then he went to Glasgow Veterinary College, and he made a name for himself in the 1970s, writing a series of books about his experiences as a vet in Yorkshire, and also his experiences in the RAF during national service. And his books had a very simple, heartwarming appeal, and by the 1980s they were getting made into TV programmes and he became a household name. So he passed away in 1995. Okay, so Busting Indie Myths Part 7. Now, today we're looking at the nationalist notion that the Union is a product of, quote, war, empire and Protestantism, close quote. And now that these things no longer hold the centrality that they used to hold in the nation, then the Union has, quote, run its course. Now, those were the exact words I heard from a woman on a panel programme called BBC Scotland Debate Night. And this notion stems from the writings of a historian called Linda Colley, who wrote this book called Britons on that very theme. And it's an interesting theory which has truth in it, as far as it goes. But as far as it goes is suggested by the subtitle of this book, which is Forging the Nation, 1707, the year of parliamentary union, to 1837. Okay? And of course, during that time, there's no doubt that elements, including war, especially against the Jacobites in 1715 and 1745, the endeavour of empire, and the growth of Protestantism did play a part in forging and maintaining the Union. However, those elements had a role, but it's wrong to imagine that they were the only elements. Even at that time, it's wrong to imagine that they were the only things holding us together, or even the predominant ones. Then, as now, we came together and we stay together through social and cultural affinity for each other, okay? The Union is about affinity, okay? It's not about things that have gone on in the past, much of which have contributed to the Union. The Union is essentially about affinity. What is affinity? Affinity is a natural liking for and understanding of someone or something. And as we say in our magazine, Do More Together, we are bound together by economic necessity, but also by natural affinity, by our sense of shared identity and shared endeavour with our family throughout these islands. That means we're not so much a family of nations as a nation of families, a union of families, if you like, with natural affinity for each other, natural liking and natural understanding of each other. And where we recognise that we have much more in common than what divides us, and so it makes sense for our political institutions to reflect that fact. So that affinity is in addition to the purely practical elements which hold us together and which benefit us, such as the obvious fact that we enjoy the benefits of association which accrue when we work together, especially economically and also on the international level. So, if I had been on that panel programme, I would have pointed out to this person that the Union has not run its course, because the Union is a process, and the process of union never reaches an end. There is no end because Britain and its union is a work in progress. As we say in our article 12 Fundamentals of British Unionism, and we'll put that up in the links, Britain is a work in progress. There wasn't any time ever since Britain first arose from out the azure main, as the song goes, when we could say, this was the perfect union, this was the perfect Britain. It is something that we're always building together. It's an ideal we seek and work towards. Each day we write a page in our endless story. And the course is never completed. Now, talking of our next programme, we're not going to be broadcasting next week, and the reason we're not going to be broadcasting next week is that we need to concentrate on our 16-page magazine in order to get it out in time for the 19th of March. And again, as I said at the beginning of the programme, that's going to be a look back on the 10 years of our organisation, a special collector's edition. So we won't be here next Wednesday, but we'll be here the Wednesday after. Okay, folks, please do get a copy of Do More Together. We'll put the link up there. You can get this by simply going to aforceforgood.uk and clicking on the shop. And you can also search for it on eBay as well, where you can also get our wee book for the Union on eBay or on our website shop. And you can buy two of them. You can buy these together for a discount as well at our shop at aforceforgood.uk. That's the address of our shop there. Okay, after a sniffles to start with, I'm feeling a lot better now, I'm glad to say. We had a great guest. Thank you so much to David. Thank you also to all the people who have commented on tonight, and a lot of viewers as well. We're here every Wednesday from 7 to 8 across all our digital platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and also TikTok. As it happens, we won't be here next Wednesday, but we'll be here the Wednesday after. So folks, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for watching. God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen. See you next time.